Namaskara. I am Dr. Harihara Murthy. I am a consultant ENT specialist. Breathing freely from the nose is critical for a person to have normal health. So sometimes there can be an impediment that by way of a very common problem called deviated nasal septum. A deviation of the nasal septum happens when there is a buckling of the middle wall of the nose, as a result of which there can be a deviation from the midline. The septum dividing the nose into right and left is the midline. It's made up of 4 different structures, the cartilage being the frontmost and the little flexible part of it, but the more rigid parts are the bony parts behind. Now, if there is an excess growth of bone for whatever reason, or there's an injury to the nose from the front, as in a frontal or a assault from the front of the side of the nasal framework, there can be a buckling of this nasal septum, as a result of which there can be a deviation. Sometimes birth trauma due to prolonged labor can also cause a deviation of the septum, and it can be identified in newborn babies. So these are the multiple causes of deviation of the nasal septum. Why is it important? Is because if you cannot breathe freely from the nose, it causes change in the aerodynamics of the nasal cavity, and that can lead on to recurring sinusitis. It can also cause a prolongation of the breathing process through the nose with high force because of the obstruction, thereby causing elongation of the palatal structures. Now, this by and of itself may not sound very serious, but for a person who has a very elongated palate can have snoring. And as a result of that, there can also be an associated obstruction to the normal breathing process, leading on to obstructive sleep apnea. So deviated nasal septum has to be corrected as and when it causes symptoms. Having said that, about 60% of the people have a deviated nasal septum. Not everybody requires correction.